Let me ask you something uncomfortable. Have you ever watched someone step over others, ignore emotions, break promises, protect only themselves, and still win? They get the promotion. They get the power. They get the attention. They get the control. Meanwhile, the good person stays stuck. And deep down, you hate that it works. But here's the darker truth no one wants to admit. Selfish people don't win because they're lucky. They win because they understand something about human nature that most people are too afraid to use. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Tonight, we're not talking about morality. We're not talking about kindness. We're talking about power. 1. The illusion of morality. Most people grow up believing that being good guarantees success. Work hard, be honest, help others, sacrifice. But the world doesn't reward morality. It rewards leverage. This is something even Machiavelli understood centuries ago. In The Prince, he didn't teach cruelty for the sake of evil. He taught something colder. People admire virtue, but they submit to power. Selfish individuals understand this instinctively. They don't waste energy proving they are good. They focus on making themselves necessary. And necessity is more powerful than kindness. 2. They don't play fair. They play smart. You think they win because they don't care. That's partially true, but it's deeper than that. Most people are trapped by emotional hesitation. What if I hurt their feelings? What will people think? Is this wrong? Selfish people remove that layer. They ask only, does this benefit me? Does this move me forward? Can I get away with it? That last question is the key. They don't act randomly. They calculate risk. And because most people assume others think like them, they never see the move coming. That's the power of asymmetry. If you hesitate and I don't, I move first. If you worry about fairness and I don't, I exploit gaps. If you seek approval and I don't, I act freely. Freedom from guilt becomes a weapon. 3. They understand the scarcity principle. Human beings chase what feels scarce: attention, time, validation, access. Selfish people ration themselves. They don't overgive. They don't over-explain. They don't over-apologize. They create distance, and distance creates value. When someone is always available, they become predictable. When someone is selective, they become intriguing. This is why selfish people often seem mysterious, not because they're deep, because they withhold. And withholding triggers pursuit. 4. They master emotional detachment. Most people lose because they're emotionally invested in being liked. Selfish people detach. They can cut ties quickly. They can walk away faster. They can replace people without emotional collapse. That emotional independence gives them leverage. When you need someone more than they need you, you've already lost. Selfish individuals protect their emotional core like a vault. And because they're not afraid to lose you, you become afraid to lose them. Power shifts instantly. 5. They exploit social conditioning. You were trained to share, to compromise, to consider others. They were trained by experience. They learned that most people are predictable. People want approval. People fear rejection. People avoid confrontation. People assume fairness. Selfish individuals exploit these patterns. They say just enough to appear cooperative. They promise just enough to maintain access. They charm just enough to lower defenses. Then they extract what they need, and by the time you realize it, the deal is done. 6. The brutal reality no one admits. The world quietly rewards controlled selfishness, not chaos, not cruelty, not recklessness, strategic selfishness. Because at the highest levels, business, politics, influence, decisions are not made emotionally, they're made strategically. And strategy often requires detachment. Even leaders praised for compassion understand this truth. Public virtue, private calculation. That duality is ancient, and those who master it dominate rooms without raising their voice. 7. But there's a hidden cost. Here's where it gets darker. Selfish people win externally, but internally, that's another story. Because constant calculation reshapes the mind. Trust weakens. Connections thin. Paranoia grows. When you see everyone as leverage, you eventually believe everyone sees you the same way. And sometimes, they do. But here's the question you need to ask yourself. Is selfishness winning, or is it simply surviving in a world that punishes innocence? And more importantly, can you learn the strategy without becoming the villain? That's where things get dangerous, because once you understand how selfish people win, you start noticing how often you've been losing. And in next, we'll uncover the psychological mechanics behind strategic selfishness, how it rewires power dynamics, why people secretly respect it, and how to use it without destroying your own integrity. If you thought this was uncomfortable, You haven't seen the real layer yet. We already stripped away the illusion. We saw that selfish people don't just get lucky. They move differently. They calculate differently. They detach faster. Now let's go deeper, because what makes selfish people win isn't just behavior, it's psychology. And once you understand the psychology, you'll start seeing power dynamics everywhere. At work, in relationships, in friendships, in leadership. 8. They control perception, not reality. Here's something most people misunderstand. Winning isn't about being right. It's about being perceived as strong. Selfish individuals understand this instinctively. They don't argue endlessly. They don't defend themselves emotionally. They don't over-explain. They project certainty, and certainty is persuasive. This is something deeply aligned with the principles of Niccolo Machiavelli. He emphasized that appearing decisive is often more powerful than actually being morally correct. Most people crumble under pressure because they want approval. Selfish individuals remain composed because they prioritize advantage over validation. When you control perception, you control the narrative. And when you control the narrative, you control outcomes. 9. They use emotional economy. Think about this carefully. Most people overspend emotionally. They give too much attention. They give too much loyalty. They give too much explanation. Selfish people operate like investors. They ask, what is the return? Is this worth my energy? Does this increase my position? They conserve emotional resources. And what is scarce becomes valuable. When you don't react instantly, when you don't chase, when you don't beg for understanding, you shift the emotional balance. People subconsciously assign higher status to the one who needs less. That's uncomfortable, but it's true. 10. They understand the power of exit. The ultimate leverage in any interaction is the ability to walk away. Selfish individuals are always ready to exit, not dramatically, not emotionally, quietly. And that readiness changes everything. In negotiations, in relationships and friendships, the one who can leave without collapsing holds the power. This principle echoes through the ideas of Robert Greene, who explains in his works that dependence creates weakness, while controlled detachment creates authority. If someone senses you need them more than they need you, your influence drops instantly. Selfish people never let themselves appear dependent, even when they are. That illusion protects them. 11. They embrace selective cruelty. Here's the part most people avoid admitting. Sometimes, progress requires disappointing others. Selfish individuals don't see boundaries as cruelty. They see them as strategy. They will decline opportunities that don't benefit them, distance themselves from low-value environments, prioritize their advancement over group comfort. To outsiders, it feels harsh, but to them, it's discipline, and discipline compounds. While others are stuck trying to please everyone, they are building momentum. Momentum is invisible at first, but once it snowballs, it looks like overnight success. 12. Why people secretly respect selfishness. Now here's the paradox. People complain about selfish individuals, but they often admire them. Why? Because selfishness signals self-priority, and self-priority signals self-worth. If someone treats their time as precious, others assume it is. If someone refuses to tolerate disrespect, others hesitate to give it. Confidence mixed with detachment creates an aura of authority. Even if people criticize it publicly, they feel it privately. 13. The dangerous edge. But here's where the line becomes thin. Strategic selfishness can protect you. Uncontrolled selfishness destroys you. There's a difference between 1. Prioritizing your growth. 2. Exploiting everyone around you. One builds strength. The other builds isolation. History is filled with figures who mastered power but lost trust. And without trust, power becomes fragile. Even Machiavelli himself warned that being hated is dangerous. Fear can maintain control, but hatred invites collapse. So the true mastery is balance. Appear cooperative. Think strategically. Act selectively. 14. The real question. So why do selfish people always seem to win? Because they detach emotionally, conserve energy, control perception, maintain exit options, prioritize self-interest strategically. But here's the twist. The real winners are not blindly selfish. They are selectively strategic. They know when to cooperate. They know when to withdraw. They know when to protect their advantage. They are not villains. They are disciplined. And discipline looks cold to the undisciplined. 15. The final layer, let me leave you with this thought. The world doesn't reward innocence. It rewards awareness. If you remain naive, believing everyone plays fair, you will always feel betrayed. But if you understand the mechanics of strategic selfishness, you stop being exploited. You stop overgiving. You stop chasing validation. You become calm, calculated, hard to manipulate. And that doesn't mean you become heartless. It means you become conscious, because in the end, selfish people don't always win. Aware people do. The difference? Selfish people protect themselves by instinct. Aware people protect themselves by understanding. And once you understand the game, you don't have to play it blindly anymore.